everyone. Welcome to All Points. I'm Dr. Dave Lucas, your host, and we would like for you to hit that share button right now because lots of friends and family members that you know, friends on your Facebook or on your YouTube experience will want to follow this. So welcome. We're thankful. If you're following us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We appreciate that. Hey, we're going to be talking about the logging industry, more especially timber and boards and products, wood products. So we want you to hit the share button because right now this is a hot topic. The cost of timber, cost of lumber has quadrupled in the last few months. We all know that it's because they can't get truck drivers or the wood is not available and so forth. So we went down to Grays Branch, Kentucky, which is located right there at the edge of the AA highway, for those of you who know this region a little bit. And they saw up logs every day, except for a couple of weeks, maybe if it gets down to -5 to below zero, they don't saw, but the rest of the time they do. And it's pretty amazing, so we're going to show you from start to finish the product, when the logs come in, where they go, and how they do this. Run by the Martin family down there, Pete Martin and his son Brent Martin. We're very glad to be able to talk with them, and it was wonderful. They gave us a good tour. They weren't interested necessarily to be on camera, but we got them as they were doing their work. I'll narrate this so that you can kind of follow along what's going on. But once again, welcome to All Points. We're talking about people, the Martin family in Grays Branch, Kentucky, and that's the place. I never knew that it was called Grays Branch. And all of their profession includes this whole idea of making trees into boards. And don't forget that when you're watching this tape, there are 3 items I need you to remember. First of all, it's very noisy. So there's a whole lot of noise going on the entire time. It's a noisy industry, so forgive me in advance. Number 2, there's a whole lot of motion and pounding and trees hitting the ground and logs hitting that conveyor belt, and it just shook the camera all the time. We were using support, tripod, etc., but it still was moving the world like an earthquake. And third, a lot of sawdust flying around. Even though they do a great job of sucking the sawdust off from all their machines, there's some sawdust flowing on, so that's not my dandruff, okay? Welcome to All Points. We're glad to have you. Let's go watch the tape. All right, so here we're at the Martin Brothers Logging, and this is their log yard. Big trucks from the woods bring these logs in that have been sawn, chainsaw. They cut them up into the right lengths and then drop them off here at the log yard right there in Grays Branch. Then the loader picks up the rough logs and puts them up on a platform for the debarker. This debarker is like a big circle saw, and you'll see here in a minute that it runs them through there and actually just chews all the bark off and kind of shapes them into a rounded, uniform looking tree. So these are the logs going up on that platform, and pretty interesting continuous operation here as they operate these different saws. This is the debarker, and that's Pete Martin there, one of the original brothers that opened the operation. This debarker then kicks those logs out, and the loader goes back and gets the ones that have the bark taken off of them. And the material, the raw material that the debarker spits out is taken up that conveyor belt and shot over into that trail so that everything is kept in use. So all those materials that are left over or are side product are kept and shipped off to various places. You can see they're all tagged, and mostly it's poplar, red oak, white oak, various trees that loggers will cut. They'll load in the woods and then bring in here to the yard. There you can see that rolling that around, getting it in the right position and taking in all that bark off there. Pretty interesting to watch this operation. You can see how white it is. So all the bark has been chewed off so that when they saw that tree, they are going to get just wood rather than bark, because the bark is unstable. It is not as stable as the actual wood that you're looking at. So So we were glad to talk to Pete. These guys are a little shy and they don't want to be on the camera. Well, I understand that. I've done this work doing these videos where I found a lot of people are a little bit afraid of the camera and they don't want to go on. They don't want to go on camera, and that's okay because this is his job. This is what he does. He's been at this all his life. Pretty interesting. Well, you can see that. He's the dad, and then Brett is the son. We'll see him in a minute here. But I'll watch this and kicks out. That's pretty cool. So it's all mechanized, as we'll see. And this debarker sort of shapes to the size of the log. We can do smaller logs, larger logs. So it's not just one size fits all. It kind of conforms to the different logs that are put on there. And this happens all day long so that they can get the wood that they need to ship off to the various places where they need to let it go. They send the wood products, not just these, but like, for example, the sawdust and the chips that we'll see here in a little while, up to Chillicothe, Ohio, where they still make paper. And that's pretty interesting. And then the wood goes down to the wood slabs, the boards. They go to Ironton, Ohio, and West Union, Ohio, Peebles, Ohio area. And they use that for various products that go into houses and the various kinds of uses. So there's not just one use. You see that log rolling around in there. It's pretty cool. He's debarking it. And then it ejects it out into the field. And so beforehand, it's the logs, and then afterwards it's debarked. And there goes the raw material that is saved in a trailer to be shipped out to other places. Now, the people that use this sawdust are folk who have horse stables and barns, and they can use that for bedding. And a lot of times people that have county fairs and events will use sawdust to line the roads so that people don't have to walk in the water. So a couple of different angles here so you can watch this happen. You can see that's electric, and that's Pete in the cab, and then it's ejected. It's fast and efficient. Rolls on there. Now once these are debarked, then they're taken over to another platform, and this is what's called the head saw. What you're going to do here is they're going to square these logs off. If you've ever wondered how they make the 4x4s or 6x6s or 8x8s, it's this kind of saw. Now, of course, they're not doing that just to make 4x4s, although they make some, railroad ties or whatever. They're doing this so they can cut these up into boards, as you'll see in a few minutes. But they're lined up on this platform and then turned to get ready so that they can be shaped into a square log. It's no longer round. It's shoved by that arm, and we'll see here in a minute. Now watch this. So it's pushed through the saw, and as it goes through that saw, you'll see here, the big blade cuts it the side off. So now he's going to flip it, and it's going to be sawed again so that it'll be square. You can see that there. It's pretty sharp. Well, literally very sharp. We're going to get up in the cab here and let him talk to us a little bit.
So what width do you cut these in?
It's random width. Yeah, we just have, it's just random width lumber is what we sell.
Will they make pallets out of this? Or?
No, this stuff will go into homes.
Oh, I see. use that blade?
We usually sharpen it about every day. But as far as changing the blade, it's got teeth, the inserted teeth.
Do you sharpen it by hand or with a machine?
There's a grinder there. There's what a tooth looks like, and that's carbide.
Oh,
And you can take them in and out.
Oh, I see.
So when they wear down, we just change the.
Approximately how many men do you employ here?
9.
You have to make a mental decision which way you're going to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brent was running this whole saw operation from a cab, as you could tell. And that whole process, pretty interesting as I watched him run that mechanism. And he told me one of the important things that he thinks about now is the knowledge that he's built up and that had built up to do this job. And I asked him if he looked forward to coming to work every day. And he said, well, he said 25 years ago he might have chosen something different, but this is where he is. So once it goes through the head saw, then this sort of machinery, here that's the head saw there in operation, as you can see, but once that happens, it's going to slide on through, and then it's going to get on this merry-go-round. Now he calls it the resaw, and I didn't understand at first what he meant by that, but as you watch this video, you'll see, because that actually is going to take those big square logs and put it on a carousel, and watch it. It's going to shove it through that saw there, and it's actually sawing it off at the bottom. So those squared logs now that are coming out of his head saw are going through the resaw. And why do they call it a resaw? Because they just keep shoving those square logs around and around and around so that they get sawed off at the bottom and the boards come out of it. You'll see that. It was pretty interesting. Now, I learned a lot by going to this sawmill because I understood a lot more today, or as we did this, about how this all works. You can see it's very robotic. It reminds you of seeing a robot at work. But this is a big carousel. The square log goes through that next saw there. It's like a bandsaw, but it's on the bottom. It's sawing off the board about an inch, but it varies, because they're going to run them through a mill later, put them out, run through a mill. But you can see, it decides, okay, now it's going to shove that square log through. And that at one time was the size of those big ones coming out of the head saw. So it's a pretty interesting machine to watch operate, pretty fun to watch. And I was really impressed that although there's a lot of sawdust, they're taking all the sawdust off. Back there where you saw at the debarker and here, all of this sawdust that's being produced is going to conveyor belts and going into a blower. They're making chips and so forth. It's pretty fascinating. So there you see that carousel that runs those around. Once it goes through the saw, it comes back out on the other side, gets back on the belt brings it back down, and it just keeps running it through until it's finally sawed away into boards. Pretty fascinating. Now again, there's another cab there, an operator in there keeping, but here comes a big one that probably came off while we were watching, and it starts sawing it down, board by board by board, until there's nothing left but one more board, and then it's kicked out onto the conveyor belt and back. Now also you'll watch, as I told you when we started the video, there's a lot of thumping going on, and no matter how hard I tried to cushion the tripod, it's still, you can see that it bumps, and I apologize for that because it looks like a little earthquake going on, but every time you can kind of notice, those must be very, very heavy, and it hits that platform and that saw, and then makes everything jolt. So there you see, this log came out, went through once, now it's going to go back up on the carousel, back again to the saw. It does this over and over, it's repetitious. And that's how you end up with these board links that they're going to load up later on a truck. We'll show you. It's pretty interesting that this operates down there in Grays Branch, Kentucky. And I'm sure that there are a lot bigger mills. He was talking to me about big mills that saw thousands and thousands of square feet, or linear feet they call it, every day. But this is pretty fascinating. The entire time I had the camera running, they didn't stop. They work hard at what they do. And you can see that some of those is flipped over, coming back out on the conveyor belt, and this is the resaw. And I found that to be fascinating. Several years ago, I took my Boy Scout troop down here to see this, but I didn't quite get how this worked. I just watched that go round and round, but I didn't really understand what they're doing. And sawing at the bottom. So if you look there, you can see those boards are going on down while that is flipped over. So the machine turns it around, gets it settled, gets it in the right way, then it goes right back and is sawed again. So this was part of the operation that I found very fascinating. All of it was fascinating, but this just keeps happening over and over again, like a carousel or like a merry-go-round. These big blocks of wood that he creates off that head saw are then sawed down, plank after plank after plank, until there's nothing left of at all. So what we're going to show you next then is that those boards coming off. They keep making the boards all day. So now once it's gone through the resaw, now you see the boards coming in. So you can kind of see how that works. Throws back the block and lets the board go on down. It's all mechanized, very, very robotic. It reminds me of those robot factories you see. And although they've got operators there. I don't think that Big Dave on the sign is me. I think that's probably some other Big Dave. I'm not that big. So the boards are coming out, and again, I really like that they take that sawdust in and they catch it all, and they put it in a conveyor belt. It's shot over to a conveyor belt, and I'll show you in a little while. It ends up in a big mound, and then people with the horse trailers and the barns and stables and whatever operation you need some sawdust for, you can come there and get it. So they load it up. So all these boards are cut, and then they go over to a conveyor, a big set of conveyor belts that are set with some men who are going to take those various lengths and various kinds of boards, separate them and stack them. So that's pretty cool. So you kind of get the idea there of what's going on. There's the saw operation. It's sawing at the bottom, you see. And then once it kind of notifies him that that one's gone, and notifies the machine, it kicks it off, and the board continues on down. So I found that to be really cool. He said these machines, you buy these sawmill machines, but that they always have to adapt and kind of become mechanics to get them to work for them. Because you can imagine that every sawmill is set up a little bit differently, or the lengths are a little different, or whatever, and so they kind of have to be mechanics too. Now, we'll follow this board on down, and there it goes down the conveyor belt, and we'll watch them take it off of the big set of belts and start stacking it. So this is near the end of the building here. It has to be cold in the wintertime, but he said the only time they shut down is when it gets really cold, 5 degrees or 5 below, if they can't work. Or if the electric goes off. This is an all-electric mill. You see here those guys there, they're taking all this, it goes on this big set of conveyors. There's a big set of conveyors there. And then it starts moving down there toward them. It's really interesting. Then they look at them, and they've been schooled. I don't know what they were looking at, but they've been schooled as to how they're going to stack this up. So this operation is very efficient. There doesn't seem to be a lot of waste of human effort. And the only problem that I would see is that if you were cold-natured, you'd certainly have a problem working outside like that. Now, those guys that are operating the machines are in the cab. These men that are working out here are out in the elements, although they are covered. It would have to be very, very cold. So the board's now coming off of the planer. It's not really a planer, I'm sorry. It's like a resaw, a bandsaw, and they're hitting those conveyors, and then they start moving down toward those men, and they take them and they stack them. So I had to be careful when I was using the camera, because I didn't want to get into the way, nor did I want to get in a dangerous position. So I was very careful. I appreciate Brent Martin showing me places I could stand without getting hurt, because again, not knowing the operation, I could have gotten away of a board or a loader or whatever. And he was very, very gracious. Both Pete and Brett were very gracious, good people. And he said they take some of these up to West Union to the Amish, and they get along very well with all those Amish folk. And they ship, these boards go down a lot. Most of these boards go down to Ironton, Ohio, where there's a plant where they mill these down into finished products. So maybe we'll get a chance to go down there sometime to show you what happens next. So here now you see they're stacking these boards, putting them in the right places. And they seem to know exactly what they're doing. Of course, they would have to, they wouldn't work there. But try to think of the Ohio weather, Kentucky weather, Ohio Valley really weather. Imagine doing this when it's 22 degrees or 18 degrees and snowing, but every day they do it, so it's pretty amazing. We talked a lot about COVID, and they did slow down during the COVID experience, the pandemic. They did not stop operation, but they almost did, and it did hurt this business. It's a family-owned business, so they go through the ups and downs of any business, but the COVID, the pandemic, was very difficult for them. And they're not having as much trouble as I've read about these other mills and other lumber places getting their material in or getting it out because they've got it. Now he's bundled that up. There's a big band, metal band they put on. So this is bundled up now, ready to go. And the loader is going to come in and going to pick up that big bundle of wood and going to take it around and stack it so that it's ready to go on the truck. Once again, everything is continuous. There's never a time. It's like a beehive. Nobody's idle, nobody's standing around. Everyone's doing all kinds of work, and it was pretty energizing for me to watch all this. And now they do this out of hand. I mean, this is what they do, and they know what they're doing, and they're really excellent at it. Their expertise is very evident, whoever you watch. So when they stack it over here, and these are all stacked up, you think, well, that's outside. Yeah, but it's no problem because they're going to disappear pretty quickly. The truck is going to come in, and they're going to load the truck up. Now, Once the board is pulled out, they run it through this edger. Now watch this, it takes the edge of the board that's sort of that outside, and it takes the sawdust off too, and it drops it down into that belt. But watch those edges come off of there. That's how they get the edge off the board. You just have a plain board instead of having bark or whatever on it. So if there's bark on one side, they run it through this edge saw, and they take those off. But again, none of this is waste. I remember as a boy, I would go to a sawmill, and there would be stacks of these sort of edges and trash and chips and sawdust stacked everywhere. But they don't do that. They put this on a conveyor belt, and here's the chipper, everything. These things are all run into chips, so they use the chips to make paper, they use the sawdust, they use the boards. Everything goes somewhere as a raw product for somebody to use. And I found that to be most exciting because there's very little, if no waste at all. And everything's mechanized, and everything seems to be very professional and moving right along, so it's pretty fascinating. So, like we say here, all these materials are marketed. You would think, well, here comes this edge, it's a piece of junk, nobody's going to use that. Couldn't use that for anything, right? Well, no, it's made into chips. Or, if nothing else, they use it for the sawdust. But watch this, I thought, well, this is caught here. Somebody's going to have to stop. But they're so smart, they know what they're doing, and that other piece knocks it down. Off it goes. I love this hopper where it separates the various sizes of chippers, and if the chip's too big, then it goes back and they re-chip it. So then they take it down this belt and it drops into this hopper here. Everything's got a purpose, and then they blow it into trailers so that it can be taken off to Chillicothe, and used there in the paper mill. You can see it blowing, and when that trailer gets full, then they'll switch it over to the other one. They've got a baffle, and then they click it like a railroad switch, and they blow it into the other trailer. So everything's just all planned out and really good. Now here's the sawdust. It's blown out into this tube and goes into what he called a cyclone. And it separates the air from the dust. So the sawdust would be everywhere, except it's put in the cyclone and then drops down out of the bottom. The cyclone takes all the air out, comes out the top, and the dust goes down to the bottom in a heap and then runs up that belt. So everything just runs according to plan. From start to finish, everything is a big process. And there it goes up the conveyor belt all the way up to the top of the heap. And then you come in with your pickup truck and say, I need a big load of sawdust, and they get the big loader and put it on. Or if you come in with a dump truck, well, you want a big load of sawdust. And here they've loaded up the wood and it's on the truck, and he's about ready to pull out. This load's going to Ironton, Ohio, to the paper, to the mill where they'll mill this down into flooring, 2x6s, whatever it is that they're going to need to mill it as that day. So a lot of machinery, a lot of coordination, a lot of logistics. I found the whole thing just absolutely fascinating, and I hope you have too. We would like to invite you to like the page, or if you're watching on YouTube, we'd like for you to like our channel, subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate the opportunity of these folk at Martin Brothers Logging. Pete's the only brother left. The rest of them are in other operations now, doing something else. But Pete and then his son Brent run this. We're going to give kudos to them for a job well done. This is a fascinating operation, and he's getting ready now to roll this big truck out, rolls out there. Sometimes he said they'll load 5 times a day and roll these out. And then, of course, they got the chips going out and they got the sawdust going out. So it's a big family operation and pretty exciting. So he's waiting on a car to pass there, and then he pulls out. Well, thank you so much for watching. This is All Points. I'm Dr. Dave Lucas, your host for this particular episode, and really glad to have taken time with those folk, the family, the Martin family. So please, again, like our page, subscribe to our channel, follow us if you will. These are great moments.